Hi, I'm John Hornick. Welcome to Lesson 80 of Chef's Apprentice, Learning to Cook Like a Pro, one small plate at a time. This lesson is truffled corn custard with Grand Marnier glazed foie gras. This tasty savory custard is scented with truffles and garnished with glazed foie gras. Fresh truffles are not as readily available in the US as they are in Europe, so we must often make do with substitutes like the truffle oil used in this preparation. I'll say more about that later in this video. In this preparation, you will also work with another of the world's great delicacies, foie gras, which you will sear and dice. You'll also beat eggs into a custard with an electric mixer. I usually use a KitchenAid stand mixer, but any electric mixer or even electric stick mixer will do the job. The challenges here are to make properly baked custards, set and fluffy and not overcooked or hard, sear the foie gras and dice it, and to swirl the foie gras into the warm glaze a la minute without melting it. Techniques today are chopping and dicing, topping eggs, bringing to a boil and seasoning, simmering and pureeing, whisking, beating, and adjusting seasoning, baking in a water bath, making a glaze, reducing, keeping warm, dicing and searing foie gras, finishing a la minute, and garnishing. So let's start cooking. All right, let's talk about the mise en place for lesson 80. First, we're going to need some eggs. Now, we're going to need a total of 7 egg shells that have been topped, rinsed, and put back into the carton, okay? Now, the description calls for serving 6, but I always have an extra in case something goes wrong, because that's why we have 7 eggs. Now, we're only going to need 3 of the eggs out of the shells, okay? So we'll take 3 eggs out, we'll keep them for this preparation. The other 4 eggs, put them in the fridge, make an omelet later. I'll do that later though. I'm going to take out 3 eggs and keep them for the recipe. I'm going to take the other 4 and use them for something else. We'll also need to have some black or white truffle oil. Now I keep this in the refrigerator when it's until I'm ready to use it, and it has a great scent of truffles. Now, if you can get fresh truffles, use fresh truffles, but they're very hard to get good ones in the US. If you see them in a jar in liquid, don't buy them. They don't really have the flavor of fresh truffles, they don't have the scent of fresh truffles, and they don't look like fresh truffles. Now, if you can find a fresh truffle in an airtight container with no liquid, that may be okay. If you can find them sold in rice, in an airtight container where the truffle is packed in rice, that may be okay too. Now, I'm talking mostly about European truffles that are imported into the United States. I've read that there are truffles being grown in the US. I haven't tried any of them, so I can't vouch for them one way or the other. But if you can get fresh European truffles, that would be the best. French, Italian, or Croatian. Okay, we'll also need to have some clarified butter, probably only about a teaspoon of it, and about 2 tablespoons of minced shallots. We'll need to have a pint of heavy whipping cream and about a cup of corn kernels. Now these can either be frozen or cut fresh off the cob. I just cut them off of a cob. And then we'll need to have some kosher salt, some ground white pepper, and then we'll need to have some foie gras, about 2 ounces of it. And this is foie gras. It is in a vacuum sealed package. It was frozen, it's thawing now. I'm going to leave it in that package till I am ready for it. Then we'll need to have about 2 tablespoons of Grand Marnier, which is an orange liqueur, about 2 tablespoons of sherry wine vinegar, about 1 tablespoon of honey, and about 1 tablespoon of freshly chopped chives. Okay, that's all the ingredients. We will break now. I'll come back and I'll show you the equipment for lesson 80. Okay, let's talk about the equipment for lesson 80. You need to have a cutting board, chef's knife, also a slicing knife. Then you're going to need a topper to top those eggs. Remember, we're going to top 7 eggs. We're going to take the eggs out of them, keep 3 for the recipe, keep 4 for some other purpose, and rinse out the eggshells thoroughly. Be very careful with them, and you're going to keep them in the egg carton. Cardboard egg carton, not styrofoam. We'll need to have a small bowl to hold those 3 eggs that we're going to use for the recipe. And I've already talked about the carton, but I'll just emphasize the carton needs to be a cardboard carton, not plastic or styrofoam, because this carton is going to go into the oven. and it will be in a baking pan with water, so it'll just get wet. But if you use plastic egg carton or styrofoam, it'll melt. You also need to have the top of the egg carton. We'll need to have a medium saucepan. That's going to be for heating up the making the custard that's going to go into the egg shells. We'll need to have a blender. I'm using the Ninja today. Then you'll need to have a strainer and a rubber spatula. You'll need to have a whisk to whisk the eggs. And then we're going to need to have a mixer. I'm using a KitchenAid mixer. This is the KitchenAid bowl and beater. We're going to put the mixture right into this bowl later. We'll need to have a baking pan so we can do the water bath in the oven. We'll need to have a funnel and a ladle to fill the eggshells with the custard. We'll need to have a small saucepan to make the glaze for the foie gras. And then we'll need to have a small saute pan to saute, or sear I should say, the foie gras. And then we'll need to have either tongs or a spatula to take the foie gras out of that pan, and a sizzle plate. And then we will need to preheat our oven to 300 degrees. We'll need to have a plating spoon, and then we'll need to have something to put the eggs in. Now I have these little cups here, okay? Now if you have egg cups, that's great. But you can put, what we're going to do with these is we're going to take this little cup here, we're going to pour a little kosher salt into the bottom of that, this cup. We'll just do it right now. Just enough so that it can hold this egg in position, okay? So we're going to put a little salt into that cup, and then we're going to sit that egg right into that cup so it stands up nicely. That's how you're going to serve it to your guests, okay? And then finally, we will need to have little spoons that can fit into the eggs so people can eat the custard. A teaspoon, regular teaspoon's probably too wide to fit into the egg. So these are called demi-tasse spoons, but any small spoon will do. Okay, that is all of the equipment that we'll need for lesson 80. We'll break, come back, and start cooking. Okay, first thing on our prep list is to bring to boil the cream, shallot, corn, salt, and pepper. So we're going to add the cream to our saucepan. And the shallot. The corn. Little salt. Little white pepper. We're going to put that on medium heat. Stir it up. Bring it to a boil. Now, remember, this is cream, so if we let it come to a rolling boil, first of all, it'll boil over, and secondly, it'll get a skin on it. So we just want it just to bring it to a boil. Then we're going to reduce the heat and let it simmer for 10 minutes. Okay, it is just coming to a boil, so we're going to reduce the heat to low. And then, you know, if it starts to come up and it starts to boil over, you can just lift it off the heat and it'll drop back down. It wasn't doing that, but I'm just kind of telling you that you can do that. Now we're going to let this simmer on low heat for 10 minutes. Keep an eye on it though, to make sure your heat is low enough and that it is simmering and that it's not boiling. Okay, our cream mixture simmered for 10 minutes. We're now pouring it into the blender. Now we want to puree it. Looks good. Okay, now we want to strain that right into the KitchenAid mixer bowl. Okay, now we want to whisk our eggs. Just get them nice and mixed. Okay, next we're going to mix the, or I should say beat the eggs into the cream. And the cream has cooled considerably since we put it into the blender and then pureed and strained it. But nevertheless, we're going to try to temper the eggs in so that we don't create scrambled eggs. So we're just going to run those eggs down the side of the bowl. Now that the eggs are all in there, we're going to increase this. Whoa, that was too much. Increase the speed a bit so that we get the eggs to beat more into the cream. Okay, there we go. All right, now is the time to adjust the seasoning. I'm going to add just a little more salt. And a little bit more white pepper, just a tiny bit. Use my whisk to mix that up. All right, let's taste it again. Good, perfect. Salt is just coming through. Okay, now here we have our baking pan with the water bath. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but the water comes about, a third of the way up the pan. Now we're going to place the egg carton into the water bath. It'll float a little bit at first, and then the carton will saturate, and it'll just sink to the bottom and stay in one place. Now what we want to do is fill up these eggs about 3/4 of the way. I'm only doing 4. Remember, there's enough here to do at least 7. So I filled them up till they were about a 1/2 inch from the top. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more to this one here and this one here. Okay, now we want to place the top on the egg carton. Place it on there the way it came off. There we go. And we're going to put this in the oven, and we're going to bake until those custards are set, which is going to be about 45 to 60 minutes. I'm not going to show checking them on camera. I'm just going to check them, and I'm going to use a toothpick. When the toothpick comes out clean, I'm going to consider them done. You can do the same thing at home. So now I'm heating the 1 tablespoon of honey and the 2 tablespoons of sherry vinegar in this saucepan on medium heat, stirring it up, getting it well mixed. And then once we have it mixed, which I think we do now, we're going to add the Grand Marnier. Now we can do this one of 2 ways. We can either add it and flame it. If you're not comfortable with that, don't do it. If you do flame it, be very careful and stand back. The alternative is to pour it in and just let it cook. But I like the flaming, I like the drama. So we're going to add it, and then we're going to tilt it over the flame. And it's flaming. You might not be able to see it, but it is flaming. There we go. You can see the flame. Now what we're going to do is let this alcohol burn off, and then I'm going to reduce this until we have a glaze. What's a glaze? A glaze is something thicker, right? It will coat the back of a spoon. Okay, so it's reduced to kind of a syrupy glaze, okay? So we're gonna take it off the heat. I don't want it to reduce anymore. Okay, the custards have set, took about an hour. We're now gonna put them in a warm place until we're ready to plate. Okay, now we're going to sear the foie gras in the saute pan. I already have about a teaspoon, maybe a little less actually, of clarified butter in there. I just wanted to coat the bottom, gotten it hot. I've got it on medium heat. Actually, it's a little bit higher than medium right now. I'm turning it down to medium. Now, some chefs will say to make the pan very hot. Foie gras is kind of like butter, it melts quickly, so if the pan is too hot, it could just all dissolve in the pan. So I like to have a little bit lower heat, and what we're going to do is sear it on the bottom for about 30 seconds. Then we're going to turn it over and do the same on the other side. Now let's turn it over. Oh, it's beautiful on that side that we've already seared, okay? Another about 30 seconds on this side. Okay, that side looks good too. We're going to take it off the heat, keep it warm. Okay, now we're going to take the foie gras, use the spatula instead, and then we're going to slice it with a hot knife. So I'm going to walk away, run the knife under hot water, come back. Wipe the knife, and then we're going to slice it. Okay, now we want to keep these warm until we're ready to plate up. Beautiful. Okay, so we're almost ready to plate up, so we're going to put the foie gras pieces down into the glaze, right? And then we're just going to swirl them around in that glaze, get them coated with the glaze. You can see that the glaze is nice and syrupy, okay? Try to keep the pieces of the foie gras together. Okay, now let's keep this warm, and then we're going to plate a la minute. Okay, here we have our little bowls with a little bit of kosher salt in the bottom of each one. We'll carefully take an egg and place it in the center of each one. Now we want to drizzle with a little bit of truffle oil on each one. Oh, I can smell it. It smells great. Now we want to take our glazed foie gras and just a little bit of glaze and put that right in there on top. And finally, we want to garnish with the chopped chives. Okay, that's the conclusion of Lesson 80, Truffled Corn Custard with Grand Marnier Glazed Foie Gras. You can see photos of the final dish on my Instagram, which is @ChefsApprentice, Cook Like a Pro. Next up is chestnut and pear ravioli with a bourbon butter sauce. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.